Tourist Development Council meeting for May the 15th, 2019. We are having a short meeting before we then reconvene on the fourth floor of the county courthouse for our annual budget meeting. So I'd like everybody to introduce themselves, starting with Tricia.
Tricia Rodriguez with the Clearwater Ferry and the Tropics Boat Tours.
Cookie Kennedy with the Big C and the mayor of the city of Indian Rocks Beach.
Keith Overton, Trade Winds Resorts.
Good morning, Charlie Gertis, City of St. Petersburg.
Michael Zoss, County Attorney's Office.
Karen Seal, Chair of the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners.
Paul Sacco, Interim President and CEO, Visit St. Pete Clearwater.
Russ Kimball, Sheridan Sankey, Clearwater Beach.
George Cradicka, City of Clearwater.
Doreen Moore, TRS, Travel Resort Services.
Julie Ward-Bajolski, Mayor of the Great City of Dunedin and representative of the Mayor's Council.
Tony Satterfield, Alden Suites.
Great. I have just a couple of comments. I know we have a short meeting, so I'm not sure. I'm bringing up something that may have some discussion amongst us, but the Elite Events Committee is meeting May the 29th, and I think you all received an email. I want to thank everyone for volunteering. And what I did was have Charlie Justice, so you can blame Charlie as to whether you got chosen or not, draw names out of a hat. Because I wanted to make sure it was fair and so on. So Cookie Kennedy, George Cradicka, Chuck Prather, Russ Kimball, Doreen Moore, and Phil Henderson will all be on the committee. And Julie Bajolski, Charlie Gertis, and Tony Satterfield, you're welcome to attend and add any comments, but we will not be able to have you vote on the applications. So, but we do welcome your attendance, and I'm trying to be as inclusive as I can be. So, so the question that has come up is whether in grading and the elite events, do we have a preference for giving more points to new events or more points to continuing events? Or do we just want to grade them as we see fit? Because I guess, you know, different years there's different opinions as to what we prioritize, whether we see this elite event as being a new event's pile of money or whether we see it as continuing to support qualified events that have the attendance. Any?
Couple of questions, because some of us have not been on the committee before. On the committee members, do we have continuity from prior grading in terms of the people who are on the elite committee from prior?
I believe so.
So it's Cookie, George,
I've been on
so
before.
George has been, myself, and is it Keith?
Well, you've been on before, haven't you?
Yeah, not for a couple of years.
No.
And then Russ?
I've been on for the last couple of years.
Okay.
Okay.
George, have you been on?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we do have some continuity then.
So I guess I look to prior opinions of how it's been done previously, at least in the last year or two, whether it should be weighted towards new or if it would be consistent with an overall approach. And
Mr. Kimball? Put you on the spot?
I think I would just leave it up to the committee.
Okay.
As we've done in the past. And I've seen it in the past, my experience, it kind of leans both ways, different times on it. Both new and the established ones. So I think I'd leave it up to the judgment of the committee. It comes back here for approval.
So more on the merits then of each application?
I think so.
Tony?
Yeah, having been on that since its inception, I don't see any reason to penalize something that is a proven room night revenue producer, bed tax, versus a new one. Some of these over the years have said that they were going to produce X amount, didn't come close to it.
Right.
So I would not weigh anything to the new or give the new more the benefit of the doubt than ones that have proven over the years that they produce.
Okay. Yes, Charlie.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing as Tony, but I mean, my experience over the last 4 years has been that room nights are the number one priority, and the older established events, in my mind, should get stronger scrutiny because they should have a database. They should have a reliable database for reporting their room nights as opposed to a newer event or a brand new event that is projecting room nights. And the scrutiny for a new event and their projection also needs to be strong. But of course, they're not going to have a history to talk to you about. And I think, secondly, in my memory, room nights first. Secondly, was exposure and value of exposure to the destination, TV time, commercials, things like that, the destination would get in return for, and staff has been tremendous at negotiating those packages. In my mind, those were the two things that received priority on the voting. That's just my historical perspective.
Are we?
Not to muddy the waters a little bit, because I do agree with what has been said already, but I think part of the concern was that some of the events that had been funded at the max level over the years, kept asking for more money, or at least the max each time. And the committee had felt that, well, if we reduce that a little bit, then it might give us an opportunity to fund some of the newer events to give them a jump start, as opposed to the older events just expecting that money as a guarantee.
Okay.
And so I think that was the dilemma that we were in, and we were working with staff to try to maybe figure out a way to provide the funds, maybe in kind or alternative, as opposed to the actual cash amount, to try to help the newer events to see if they might be, could qualify and get started.
Okay. I think those are all good points. I will say that because we want as much transparency as possible, I think the committee should make some suggestions as to what those dollar amounts are going to be, and then it'll, of course, come back to this full TDC. And some feedback that I got was, and we may need more information from staff, but it's, again, transparency. Is one event behind closed doors getting more money versus another one? And I just want to make sure we are fully vetting this in a public process and that it's fair to each and every applicant. So I just wanted to share that with you. Phil? See nodding heads, so that's good.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. This year, or this past year, we changed part of the process, and we're going to go to, I believe, a consent list of those that have been on for years, year over year, and not necessarily have to review and grade theirs as long as they were very similar and could still show that they were viable. I mean, Tim could probably comment more to that, but it's, there's a lot to review. It takes a lot of time. This committee has to do a lot of reading and grading and so forth, but I think we're going to try to minimize that, or not minimize it, but at least reduce the burden somewhat by taking those that are obvious, good things to have, and put them on okay, you're approved again, now go directly to Tim or whoever in staff to work with the negotiation on the exact amount and how it's spent.
Good morning, Tim Ransberger, Chief Operating Officer. You did create what we loosely call an express lane in the process. It's a consent agenda. We have 5 applicants that would qualify under that scenario going forward. And so you'll have the opportunity. We've looked at those applications. They are consistent with the applications in years past. So you have the opportunity to basically advance those on a summary vote without going through the interview process. So I think
But we will review them.
You'll still review them. You, just like a consent agenda, you could pull one off if you decide you want to have a full discussion. So I think it was a mechanism that you all wanted to put in there to basically streamline the process for those that have been here for a number of years, and you established it at 5 as the number of years consistent prior to now.
Do you have those 5 off the top of your head?
I'll ask our Director of Community and Brand Engagement, Craig Campbell, who's managing this. He was going to give a full report, and if it's okay with the chair, I'll have him just give you a rundown of what the applications look like, and he'll
That'd be
give you all the
great.
details. So, Craig Campbell.
Good morning, everyone.
Thanks, Tim. So fast track applicants, Phil, to answer your question, so we have 5 out of the 17 total applications that are proceeding for your review. So Clearwater Jazz Holiday is fast track eligible, Outback Bowl, Clearwater Beach Day, the Valspar Championship, Sugar Sand Festival, and Clearwater Superboats. So those are your 5 fast track eligible
I'm
events.
sorry, Jazz, Outback, Sugar Sand, and what were the other 2?
Valspar Championship
Valspar.
and Clearwater Superboats. Clearwater Superboats.
Okay.
And then all 10 of our current year events, elite events, they've all reapplied for funding again this year. So we have 10 out of those 17 are returning. So there's 7 new applications for your consideration.
We have 5 fast track, 5 returning, not express lane, and 7 new ones.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. And then there's also the introduction of a 4th category as well. So Valspar is the only Category 1 event, so they're eligible for consideration up to $125,000. There's 6 Category 2 events, so those would be eligible for up to $75,000. And then there's 6 Category 3 events eligible for up to $25,000, and then 4 new applicants that have applied for Category 4. So that's the cultural heritage category that was instituted this year.
What's the max for category 1 again?
1 is 125, and Category 4 is 25. So just a little preview of what to expect in 2 weeks from today. So tomorrow you will receive an email with links to all the different applications. So you'll have access to all the information that has been submitted. Then you'll have a couple weeks to review and bring forth any questions on the 29th. Any other questions on the process?
We did your committee report, or your report, sooner than later.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further comments? Okay, thank you all. Also, thank you all for agreeing to attend the June 20th joint meeting with the County Commission. And the main agenda item will be a discussion about transportation. We decided instead of having a separate meeting, we would go ahead and just do a joint meeting right away. And I know, Tricia, you're unable to attend. I'm sorry. We tried to find as best of a date as we could. And if there's anything else that you would like on the agenda to discuss with the County Commission, think about it and just email me or Cindy and let me know if there's anything else you'd like to add. Okay? All right, great. Next is the approval of the TDC minutes for April 17th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public comments. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Okay. Then next we have Brian Lowick with the Pinellas County as intergovernmental liaison to give us a TDC legislative update.
Good morning, everyone. Brian Lowack, Intergovernmental Liaison, Office of the County Administrator. Just wanted to come in today briefly, take about a minute of your time. The legislature has wrapped up their 2019 legislative session and come before you a couple times this year during session to bring you up to speed on some of the legislation that may affect the Tourist Development Council. At the conclusion, most of that legislation did die. Some of it will be back in the future. But this legislative session, 2 most important things I would bring to you today are the reauthorization of Visit Florida for 1 year, and it's funded at $50 million. So you know that was a cut. It's currently funded at $76 million. So they'll have 1 year to look at that. Will conclude in June of next year in line with the state's fiscal year. And in addition to that, beach nourishment funding. Very important to us here in Pinellas County. We've got a great program. The county has dedicated tourist development tax dollars as the local match for those nourishment projects. And it's important that the state stepped up, because when we go to the federal government, we show Pinellas County's commitment as a local partner. The state shows their commitment, and it's relatively easy to draw down those federal funds. Our last project that was just completed this year was the largest in the southeast United States. That was a little over $50 million. So it's important to show that we're dedicated here in Pinellas County and throughout the state. So they funded that at $50 million, which is the current funding level, and $40 million of that is going to be recurring funds, so we don't have to come back every year and look to allocate those funds. Those are the two most pressing issues I thought I'd bring to your attention today, and if you've got anything else, please feel free to ask, and I would encourage you all, if there is anything that you hear out there, start thinking about it now for next year. They just announced interim committee weeks will start September 14th of this year, and then they'll start regular committee weeks in October, with the 2020 session starting on January 14th. So it's going to be here before you know it.
Yes.
I hope your boss is listening or will listen to this. I want to publicly thank you. I went for the first time in my 7.5 years as an elected official. I went to Tallahassee during session this year to talk to some legislators, and Brian was kind enough before I went to help me get educated and understand some things. I specifically went for some bills that had to do with stadium financing and convention center financing and capital financing projects, and Brian was very helpful, not just in informing me, but also in making my appointments. I had a very strong meeting with Senator Tom Lee, who sponsored a bill in the Senate, and I will just share with you that that bill didn't go anywhere, and the bill in the House. I also had a meeting with Representative Avila from Lakewood, what's the place in Manatee?
Lakewood Ranch.
Lakewood Ranch, who had a bill that was even worse than Senator Lee's, and that didn't go anywhere either. So that's the good news. I will share with you that Senator Lee told me that he was very disturbed by the process that occurred in Hillsborough County with one commissioner being given negotiating power for the entire commission, and that was inherently a setup for violations of sunshine laws and all kinds of problems, and he's going to introduce a bill this session that would prohibit any public body from delegating negotiating power to one person, which I think is very smart. And he also said that he believes that the Tampa Bay Rays ought to stay in the Tampa Bay area, and so he's a strong supporter of that. But the point is, you did a great job of setting me up, getting me ready, and allowing me to have successful meetings. I'm very appreciative.
Thank you. Happy to help, and thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Phil?
A quick question on the beach nourishment. Somebody asked me this the other day, and I wasn't quite sure. The matching, if we get a project going, we have to match 50-50 with the state, and then we get federal, or do you know? If you don't know the answer.
I believe our match is a quarter, the state match is a quarter, and the federal government comes in with the rest.
Okay. That's what I thought. I know it was exponential. If we
Yeah.
put a little bit in, we get a whole lot more.
Correct.
Right. Thanks.
Anyone else? You did a great job.
Thank you.
We really appreciate everything that you do.
Happy to help.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have anything?
No, I have nothing. Thank you, Commissioner. No worries.
Whoops, I
No
was
worries.
like, oh dear. Okay, next is visit St. Pete Clearwater Chief Operating Officer report, Tim Ramsberger. We already had the lead event funding program update. The capital project funding program update, please.
Yes, so very quickly, the Board of County Commission last week reviewed the remaining applications. Advancing forward will be the Dolly Museum, the Museum of History in St. Petersburg, and Tampa Bay Watch. The American Craftsman Museum will not be continuing for consideration, and we will set that meeting in the future. We'll consult obviously with the chair and your schedules and determine when we will bring those forward. So we have those applications already forwarded to our consultant, Jones Lang LaSalle, so they're already working on their report for us.
I apologize, Madam Chair. Mr. Ramsberger, I'm sorry, my old ears didn't hear the one that didn't go forward.
American Craftsman.
Okay.
And the
received-
rationale behind that was there was no new room nights and there was nothing new in the application per se, correct, Michael? Correct.
And they received $6
we
million
felt that
in
was-
funding the first
Yeah,
round, so. yeah.
The county commission felt that that wasn't eligible. And Michael did a great report where he went down and gave us, for each one of the applications, exactly what we needed to consider. And there's still some outstanding questions, I know, on the Discovery Center.
Yes.
As well as the History Museum, that those entities will be providing answers to on the room nights, et cetera. So, Julie?
Just for the sake of transparency, I will say that I've already been, and I'm sure the rest of the board has too, been reached out to by some of the applicants for private meetings, and I did check with Mr. Zoss, and he said it was okay, but I didn't know if the board had a policy, so I've not yet accepted any of those invitations. I just feel odd doing that. So I'm not sure if we have a policy about those kinds of things.
Well, the board, the BCC members have policies in place. As an advisory board, you're a little different, so it's up to you whether or not you choose to have the meeting. You don't have to meet with them, but you can, because you're not subject to the same considerations that the BCC members are as far as like the lobbying ordinance that's in place in Pinellas County. So it's really a choice as to whether or not.
Should we be?
I've already met with one.
You have?
Yeah.
I
It-
have to.
Like
You
Mayor-
can.
Cleared it with
Lucas
Michael
Mann.
first,
You
you know.
can. I mean, again, it's
Same
really,
question.
if you choose not to because you don't feel comfortable, then say no. And you don't have to meet with them. It's
Well,
up to you.
I mean, I want to do whatever the board's doing, you know? I don't want to go against the board or anything. I just wanted, I'm new and I just want to make sure I wasn't crossing any kind of lines.
I accepted the invitation because I'd like to get an advance insight from their perspective and, you know, instead of just seeing the cold,
Got it.
hard presentation and then having to follow up later or whatever, so.
Do you find it helpful?
I did.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Just
Yes.
one more quick thing. So refresh our memory on, we're doing this every other year for the capital,
Under your current capital funding guidelines, it's a 2-year cycle.
right? So this will be, we'll address these sometime in the latter part of the year for next year's funding or help me.
We open up a year from this fall for the next funding cycle. So in the current cycle, we will not have new applications coming in until next fall.
Right, so we'll decide on these within this fiscal year
Yes,
and then we'll skip next year. Okay.
that's the way it's laid out currently in the guidelines, yes.
There, however, is going to be one that will be out of process. I brought it forward to the county commission. The Florida Holocaust Museum has some security problems, and so they have requested funding to match. The state's going to give them some money and so on. They don't have an application in yet. They have a request, and I went and met with the Florida Holocaust Museum and saw it for myself, and it definitely is a security problem. And so they need to redo their entire front entrance. And so the county commission said that they would like it to go through a capital projects guideline process and try to meet the same criteria, but this is kind of going to be an exception because it is a safety and security problem. And given what's happened throughout the United States and other areas, we felt that it was appropriate that this be considered. But again, it needs to go through the process. So they have been informed of that. I called personally and talked to the director, and Paul's already been working on it. Tony?
I don't know if this question's directed at you, Tim, or Jim. What's and I'm not sure I'm even asking this right, what's available with, as it relates to capital dollars?
That's something that, if you recall from past discussions, that we'll see how this all works. You know, we have our June 20th workshop on, maybe we can add that to the discussion at that
Okay.
point. Might be a good time to,
Even the budget workshop after this meeting, we can probably run through some of those.
So you
Okay.
want to postpone
All
that?
right.
Okay.
but where I'm going with this is, you know, we don't know what all the asks are for capital. So my thought process was that we would lay it all out. And then everybody almost has to pick and choose what, and so that's, but But time-wise, we may not have that luxury to do that. I still don't know, because we don't know where the rays are in any of this. And again, I think we'll know more after the June 20th joint workshop as to everyone's thoughts on funding or not funding transportation.
My only comment is to make sure that we get that number before we walk into a meeting.
Yes, and Jim has the information. We'll provide a copy of it to you at the budget workshop right after this.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you, Tim. Department reports, all are on file at partners.visitstpeteclearwater.com. Next is Visit St. Pete, our great interim president and CEO report from Paul Secco.
So in the interest of time, I mean, you've received this ahead of time, but we've had another banner month. I mean, from a tax collection standpoint, we set a record. We're over $9.5 million for the month of March. And as far as your outlook for March with rooms sold, we were up 0.6%. Your ADR rate was at 4.1%, and then the RevPAR was 5.5%. You have the backing for each one of those going through the report, but if there's questions on any of that I can answer or staff can answer, we'll take that.
Great, that's good news. Any questions? Thank you. Another comment from me before we move to the board member comments is that we have a meet and greet for the finalists for the new president and CEO for Visit St. Pete Clearwater. It's at the Sheraton Sand Key this evening from 6:30 to 8 p.m. I believe you were all informed, but if not, this is formal notification as well as public notification. So, okay. Any board member comments?
Excuse me, how can you refuse free booze, free food for an hour and a half, and three candidates? So come and join me for dinner.
And let me also just mention that the process is that the three candidates will give a presentation, a short presentation, and then they will then go to an informal meet and greet where you can talk individually with the candidates. It's the process that we followed when we hired Barry Burton, and it worked very effectively because it gave the public time to meet and greet, and it also gave a chance to see someone's presentation skills. Okay, any other board member comments? Yes, Cookie.
Hi, I just want to take a minute to thank Russ Kimball. I wasn't here at the last meeting. He had the Red Tide Summit for us, and he was very gracious. We had almost 300 people there. It's the second one in the state, and I can't thank you enough. You were just awesome, everybody, the food. And so from the city of Indian Rocks Beach, we got you a shirt, and now you're part of us.
Very nice.
You can be mayor too. So thank you.
I have to tell you, can I just take a minute? Friday night we had Ryan Wells Foundation. We raised a lot of money for culinary students, and you see 50 some odd students in white jackets working with industry and the teaching chefs, and in 11 food stations. And we had 2 students that have their own business that came back, had their own food. One's a bakery in St. Pete, and had their own food, and it was a contributor sponsor also, returning to do the event with us. And there was a second one, and also at that, I had the great fortune and pleasure that the gentleman sitting on my right gave me the key to the city of Clearwater. So now I have the shirt to wear from one city on the side of Sand Key, and the key on the other side. So if anybody needs anything, call me. I'll help you. But it's been a pleasure with that Ryan Wells to get where we've been over 13 years.
And Russ is being modest. He started this evening 13 years ago, and he was honored Friday night as in that regard and for all that he does for tourism and for culinary. George, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to add that that honor is a scholarship in Mr. Kimball's name to culinary arts students, and they raised I think that's the big dinner that we're doing, right? For that?
Yes, that's the one in December.
In December. So everybody who contributed toward that scholarship is having a dinner in Mr. Kimball's honor to help that program. And as I had said that night, I think of all the events that we get to go to as elected officials, this is the most rewarding because you see students who have a desire and a dream to work in the tourist industry, to have their own restaurant, to be their own chef. And it is just really a great event, and I appreciated the chairman being there too.
And I thank Keith Overton, who had a food display and worked with industry and everything from his establishment, from Tradewinds, and I appreciate that. And thank you for the shirt. And
the Birchwood did too, didn't they?
Yeah. Right, the Birchwood down at this end. So 11 different restaurants, and it's county-wide. That's what's great about who's there that night, so.
And it was delicious. You missed out. You weren't there, so. Any other board member comments? Jen, do you want to?
I apologize, I didn't come up during public comment. Jen Carlisle with Visit Florida. I just wanted to take an opportunity, if I could, Madam Chair, just to say thank you very much for all your support. So many of you on this board were very instrumental in letting your voices be heard during legislative session. I don't have any new information to share other than what Brian already did with you, but I just sincerely wanted to express my thanks. You have our commitment to continue to move forward to serve this industry as best we can. A lot of you know me. You know my passion for this area. Last week was National Travel and Tourism Week. I went to an event, I think, almost every single day in 7 different counties, and just to be able to see right in those communities the stories of the people that are running these businesses, that are making their livelihoods from tourism, is really impactful, and I think we have a lot more stories to tell like that. So I just want to say thank you. Visit Florida does have a board meeting today, so they will be talking through all the strategy moving forward with the $50 million budget and our authorization for next year. So at the next meeting, I hope to have some more information on how we're going to do that, and of course how we'll continue to work with Visit St. Pete Clearwater in the most effective and efficient ways that we can to keep bringing more people into the state of Florida. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Thank you for all Visit Florida does, and we're glad that, we're sad that you didn't get complete funding, but we're glad that you got a substantial amount of funding. So, okay, we are going to adjourn and head down to the 4th floor for our budget meeting. Thank you all.